Good evening and welcome to the Candidates Forum for Cedar Falls School Board. My name is Jean Seelan and I'm with the League of Women Voters. This forum this evening is sponsored by the Cedar Falls Education Association, the Cedar Falls Educational Support Personnel Association, and the League of Women Voters. We do invite you to be participants in this forum this evening by submitting written questions. Someone, if you need a piece of paper to write a question, raise your hand and someone will bring paper to you, and likewise will come and pick it up. I'd like to introduce our candidates. Starting at this end, we have Erin Cully, Nate Gruber, Jeff Hassman, Susie Hines, Jenny Lieber, and Susan Sims. We're going to start by opening comments, and we'll start at this end with Mr. Cully.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Erin Cully. I am from Whiting, Iowa. That is in northwest Iowa, south of Sioux City, about 30 miles. I grew up in a K-12 school of about 220 students. I moved to Cedar Falls for college. I majored in Spanish and social work. I met my wife, Grace, at college at a church service at Prairie Lakes. Right after my undergraduate experience, I moved to St. Louis for 18 months for my Master's of Social Work at Washington University in St. Louis. After I completed that education, I moved back here for my first job at Covenant. About 8 months into my time at Covenant, I decided to enroll in the Master's of Healthcare Administration program at Des Moines University. About 6 months into that, I transitioned over to a role in Unity Point Clinic as a clinic administrator for their psychiatry clinic, which at the time was in Allen Hospital. We have since then moved to Cedar Falls. I've been in that position since April of 2016. My wife and I, we have two children, 3 and 4. We do have a child in the school district. We did adopt them in November. And I would say my interest in school board comes for a couple reasons. First reason would be that I have children in the school district. I want to contribute and serve. I also would just say that I really do consider myself a lifelong learner. I understand the value of education, and I have been very thankful to receive education, and I want to support that.
Thank you. Mr. Gruber?
All right. Well, thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the sponsors of this event, the League of Women Voters, the Cedar Falls Education Association, the Support Personnel Association, for organizing this forum and inviting the candidates and giving us the opportunity to speak directly to the voters. Thank you to Jean for moderating the event, and thank you to Channel 15 for the work they do to televise and stream this event, and giving those who are unable to attend tonight the opportunity to learn about the candidates. As Jean said, my name is Nate Gruber. I currently work as a substitute teacher in the Cedar Falls and Waterloo school districts. I'm a proud graduate of UNI, which is what brought me to Cedar Falls in the first place. In fact, I have 3 degrees from UNI, a bachelor's degree in economics and finance, a bachelor's degree in social science teaching, and recently I just completed my master's degree in public policy. UNI is what brought me to Cedar Falls 20 years ago, and while my wife and I moved and lived in Dubuque for a number of years after we got married, we jumped at the opportunity to return to Cedar Falls when she received an offer to join the faculty at UNI, which we did in 2015. We are the parents of 2 young children, Owen, who is 19 months, and Amelia, who is a second grader at Orchard Hill Elementary. I'm running for school board because I believe in the mission of public education, and I believe that the Cedar Falls School District is one of our community's strongest assets. As a parent, as an educator, and as someone who has experience with policy as well as finance and insurance issues, I bring a broad understanding of the issues and policies that often come before the board. As a school board member, I will use my voice for students, teachers, and staff in the community, and I will advocate for policies that help teachers teach and students succeed. I want to help keep Cedar Falls schools moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Hassman?
Thank you very much, Gene. Good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming. Thanks to the League of Women Voters, Cedar Falls Education Association, Cedar Falls Educational Support Personnel for organizing this forum. It's great that everyone can be here. Give you a quick introduction about myself. I am a Cedar Falls native. I was born at Sartori. Those that can still say that are dwindling, but I was born at Sartori. We're a small group. I started out after graduating from UNI. I worked for John Deere for several years in their overseas division, and then eventually was in their corporate development at the headquarters in Moline. From there, I moved to Madrid, Spain, and I lived for 6 years working for a large consultancy firm out of Madrid, and traveled all over Europe and Asia. And when I got tired of sitting on airplanes every week and never seeing my family, and my wife and I came up with a very bright idea. Let's move back home to Cedar Falls. So 13 years ago, we came back to Cedar Falls. Haven't regretted a day. Well, there are some of those days in the middle of January that I wonder, but no, it's great. This is a great community. I'm happy to be from here. I'm happy to give back to this community. So it's been a great pleasure. I'm obviously completing my first term on the board of the school district, and we've done some wonderful things in the last four years. Our community has decided to get behind our schools and pass a couple of bond issues, which has relieved the capacity issues that we had at both the elementary and the high school levels, and that's just been wonderful support from our community. And also, I think this expansion will be an incredible stimulant for economic growth in our area. I just want to also just thank everyone. You know, as you come on as a first-term board member, man, there's a lot to learn. And I just want to thank, the fellow board members, the members of the staff that were very patient with me and taught me a lot of things. And I just want to thank all of our educators as well that are working very hard every day for our students. And I look forward to having a great discussion here this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you again to Jean and all of our hosts tonight, and thank you to the candidates for stepping forward to run for this election. A little personal background. We have been in Cedar Falls since 2006 when my husband joined the UNI faculty in the School of Music. If we jump 13 years ahead, I now have a high school 17 graduate from CF who is now at UNI. I have a freshman at Pete Junior High. I work full-time in the engineering at John Deere out at the PEC. I serve on the boards of Sturgis Falls, the Cedar Falls Schools Foundation, and am a member of the Cedar Falls Booster Club. This was our 10th move in our 5th state when we came here. We pack boxes really, really well. The reason I'm running for a re-election for the board can be summed up in these words. It's about 5,500 students. I believe that the last 4 years I've demonstrated a deep commitment to the education of our students. I'm passionate about ensuring our children receive the best opportunities for success. And I love the district. So I look forward to an enjoyable night. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Ms. Lieber?
Hi, again, I'm going to thank the sponsors as well. I won't name everyone because I think we all are very thankful for our sponsors tonight, so thank you. I also want to thank the voters for having elected me the last 2 terms. This would be, I'm running for my 3rd term on the board. When I first came on the board, I would have been one of the new ones on the block. We had a very veteran board and seasoned board when 3 of us joined. One of those people is now our mayor, and one of those people is now representing us at the House at the state level. So I think you can see how board tenure, board activity, board experience really does lead to additional civic engagement. So I thank them for putting themselves forward and continuing to advocate for us at the state level. I actually came from Central Iowa, so I'm one of the few who maybe weren't originally from UNI. I think that's really, or from Cedar Falls. I think that's nice to bring in kind of a different perspective because sometimes it's good to know what you don't know and to know what you do know to bring in and bring some different ideas to the board. We moved up here after I graduated from Iowa State. My plan was to be here 3 to 5 years, and then I was out of Iowa. I was going to Chicago, New York, some big city. Well, lo and behold, some 20-some years later, since '93, I've now raised 3 children here in the district, love the Cedar Valley, have gotten to have a lot of volunteerism experiences here in the Cedar Valley. We love this area. We love our downtown. It's been amazing to see our city grow and be rejuvenated, be renovated, and redeveloped as we've lived here over these past several decades. So I'm the parent of 3 Cedar Falls students. My daughter was a 2015 grad. We didn't even look at UNI because the last place she was going to come was UNI because it was too close to home. She was from Cedar Falls, too much like high school. She went out of state her first year. She graduated in May. Now not only graduated from UNI after coming back to the state, but is now living here, employed here, and it's really fun to get to know her and see her and her friends having grown into such amazing adults. Being from Iowa State and then coming to love the Panthers, there was one institution I really didn't want my son to go to for purely athletic reasons. That is where he is now, so he is at the University of Iowa, so I'm benefiting all of our state institutions with my tax dollars and checkbooks, so you're welcome, Regents institutions. And I finally have a daughter, Samantha. She is a junior at our high school, lots of strengths and talents, doesn't know where she wants to go or what she wants to do, so we're in the midst of that college preparation, college journey, so it's been really fun for me to see my students grow into the people they're becoming. For my professional and background experience, I actually was in advertising originally. I was a journalism major. Oh my goodness, stop, really? Oh my gosh. Can I just do a couple more real quick things or am I done? I'm gonna have to go back, I'm sorry. You guys, that went so fast.
Ms. Sims.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Sims. I would like to thank whoever put my name tag next to Jenny's, because I'm like the new kid on the block, and she's the upperclassman. I'm the new kid at school, and she made me feel welcome. I think Cedar Falls is a great community. I think all of you agree with me, or you wouldn't be here. One of the things that makes us great is our school system. And we have had a lot of wonderful people serve on the board in the past. We have a great administration, we have great staff, and we have great kids. And the reason why the school is strong is because our community is strong and we're devoted to education. I'm running for the school board because I want to be part of strengthening what is already strong, and where we may find areas that need improvement, to bring a deliberative, measured voice to the discussion that comes to a school board. I've learned that a school board is a deliberative and a collaborative body. My work in the last several years has been almost nothing but collaboration. I serve in various volunteer capacities around the state of Iowa, and I bring my experience in working with different nonprofit groups from Des Moines to Iowa City to Cedar Rapids, Ames, and other parts of the region, and all of the societal questions that come to bear that affect our students. And that experience gives me the opportunity to encounter people who have different worldviews than I have, who have different backgrounds than I have, and I find that I can learn from everybody, and I find that I have something to offer to any group discussion. My husband and I have enjoyed having our 5 children go through school here, and I hope to be able to give the next generation of students as good of education as my children were able to have. And I'm out of time.
Thank you. I forgot to introduce somebody very, very important. Sherry Dargan is our timekeeper tonight, and we are trying to stay within 2 minutes for every response. I know that's very, very difficult, but
Maybe not for all of us, for some of us, for sure.
if we can try to do that, it would be appreciated. Okay, while you have a chance to write your questions, I have a couple of questions I'm going to ask the candidates. The first one is, what is the most crucial problem facing the Cedar Falls schools, and how should it be resolved? And I think we'll start down at this end this time.
I get to start, great. You know, when I hear that question, I've had people ask me that question as I've been talking to voters around the area. And my response is, I am not really coming at this election looking at our school district as having a problem that needs to be solved. Rather, I would like to perhaps take that question in a slightly different direction, and that would be, I believe we have challenges that we can take advantage of. Our school district is growing. We've been able to, as a school district, and when I say we, obviously I'm not on the school board, I don't work for the school, but I have been on the facilities committee for several years. So I have had a hand in the planning and the preparation for a lot of the school improvements that we've enjoyed, and for several years we lobbied on that committee to get school building equality. And we really have that now with our elementary schools, our junior highs that are equal in terms of facilities. Our school district now also has challenges looking at other areas of equality, educational equality, social equality, and inclusion, and everything else that we may want to be focusing on as a community that helps us be stronger. So I think one of the greatest challenges that we face as a school district is to continue to build on what is good, not trying to take away from what there is there, to strengthen it, but also then to look for ways that we can improve as the world changes and grows and develops, all the while helping our community stay cohesive and focused. Everyone in this community is motivated by a strong educational system. Those that voted for our bond issues and those that voted against it are still devoted to education in our community. When we come together, that allows us to find out what each other understands, and then we can find solutions when problems arise and do that together. So my focus would be on the school board is to work in that collaborative way to look at the challenges that we have and build with the strengths that we have and to find our way forward for the benefit of our students.
Thank you. Ms. Leeper?
All right, so first of all, I see we have a lot of opportunities. I don't really see that we have major problems in our district. I think we have some great opportunities, and that's how I like to look at things. One of the things I'd really like to focus on if I'm elected for my third term would be inclusion and mental health. I think these are some issues that are really impacting all of public education right now. It's really important that we are developing a common understanding for our staff, for our parents, for our students, that tolerance, acceptance does not necessarily mean agreement all the time, but it does mean we can still be kind people to each other. We can still be accepting of each other's worldviews, each other's cultural backgrounds, each other's identities, and that's really important. And it directly relates to mental health as well. So those are some things I think as a district we can be proactive on and really build our capacity for. Some other things I think that we have some opportunities to leverage our new facilities that we're having and how we change the educational model. One of the reasons I got on the school board initially was because I'm very passionate about relevant and engaging education. I'm not very passionate about control and conformity issues in our educational system. I think making our students have a very relevant experience where they're understanding not only how the content that they're learning, but how they're going to apply that content in the real world. I think it's important that we are helping our students identify their own personal strengths and passion areas. We've talked a lot about having learning at high levels for all students, but I think if we can tap into a student's strengths and passion, that really goes a long way to helping them appreciate education, rediscover that love of learning. I do this a lot. I'm actually at the University of Northern Iowa now in the admissions office, so I talk to our college students about please doing some self-assessment to identify those things, because if you can marry your strengths and your passion in whatever you do, it's going to be very fulfilling. You're going to be able to find your purpose, and I think we can do that with our educational opportunities. I do feel like it's important also to have some consistency at the board level. When I came on, I was the new person in town. We had a very experienced board. I am now the most senior member with the retirement of Joyce Coyle, our board president, and I'm just running for my third term. So I really hope I can continue to provide that consistency and be a voice of supporting the district initiatives that we've set forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I thought about the same thing, problems facing. We have problems. There's always problems out there, but I think the more crucial problem is facing public education in the state of Iowa, and it's state funding. And I'm glad to see that we have some legislators here this evening. And you're going to say, well, it's state funding. Because we need everybody to advocate for state funding. And that's not, we can do it as existing on a school board, we can do that. But it is so much more important to have the community members, the parents, your neighbors advocate for additional state funding. We have wonderful opportunities out there to connect with your legislator, but there are groups called Parents for Great Iowa Schools, which is engaging in state funding activities. Lots of ways to be involved, and that's the focus that I see for all of public education.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this question, my times have changed. 4 years ago, we were talking about kids sitting in converted storage rooms and other areas because our schools were absolutely busting at the seams. And so I think we've solved one of our crucial problems, which was our overcrowding that we have in our schools. But I think, regardless, I think some of our other challenges are just more on an educational level and how we're meeting our kids wherever they're at in their educational continuum. I think there's been some organizational changes that have been very good for us to look at our students from the minute they get in our doors until the minute they graduate, and that's just kind of from an organizational standpoint, how we're treating that. And I think the other thing that is very important along that is just continuing to challenge how we're preparing our students. It's not just about the highest ACT score. It's not just about the highest GPA. Now that's really hard as a parent because those are things that drive your scholarships and drive where you're going to get acceptance letters from, and those things are important. Don't get me wrong; those things are very important. But we also want our students when they leave here that they're going to be very successful, and that mark of being successful isn't what they're doing a year from now when they left Cedar Falls High School. That's what they're doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Are they very successful people? Are they competent? Are they engaged citizens in our communities? And that's an area that's really hard to gauge, but I think as we bring in practical experiences, for example, like the CAPS program, where we give our students an opportunity that they can get into the community, they can take the knowledge that they've learned in the classroom and they can apply it in a practical environment. I think that's the kind of experience that will help them be much more successful in that 5, 10, and for their whole lifetimes. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. I do agree with the framing that we don't necessarily have problems here in the Cedar Falls School District. It's been been a pleasure to seek this seat and realize that we aren't facing severe financial troubles like so many rural districts are. We're not facing achievement issues that, have the community questioning the the purpose and the existence of the school district. I do think I've seen enrollment projections over the next 10 years, and I do think one of the challenges that we're going to be facing is at a staffing level, particularly in terms of teachers. And something I would like to see is to strengthen those employment contracts with the teachers unions and the staff unions to make Cedar Falls a much more attractive place for future teachers to come here and teach. The collective bargaining agreement or law that was passed a couple of years ago down at the State House has done quite a number to the teaching profession here in the state. I know Minnesota has actually taken action to try to attract as many teachers as they can from the state up to their state. And I think there are things here we can do at the board level, like adding back permissive items into the collective bargaining agreements that would make Cedar Falls attractive to teachers and staff and put us into unique company in the state of Iowa, as many districts have eliminated a lot of those provisions in the agreements. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I will say over the last couple of months, I've tried to spend as much time as I can meeting with people from Cedar Falls to get more of a community context on the perspective of the district and what really is there for opportunity. I agree with what everyone else has said, that my conclusion is not necessarily that there's one major problem that needs fixed. I would, as a candidate and potential board member, I would call it areas of focus and kind of those long-term strategic things that need to continue to be worked on. As a candidate, I would think it'd be very important for the board to continue to try to forecast unforeseen changes that would impact the district, and really trying to be as informed as possible when it comes to that, and making sure we have a strategic approach. Along those lines, I think it would make sense that the district is very organized and ready to respond. I also think it makes sense to maintain a culture that is adaptable and isn't too rigid. I think from the feedback I've gotten, something that I am thinking about is that it's really going to be important to continue to maintaining a high-performing status as a district. I think sometimes as a high performer, it can almost be easy to no longer assess at a fairly rigorous rate where the areas of opportunity are. And I think now more than ever, we need to continue assessing where our areas of opportunity are, and really to put ourselves in a position where we can maintain that high-performing status. I do like the slogan and motto of a tradition of excellence. I would also say that I think it's going to be very important to not necessarily accept that we do things the way we've always done, and that we maintain that willingness to think outside the box and challenge the status quo.
Thank you. I think we're going to go to your questions. We've received so many wonderful questions. I want to make sure we have time for as many as possible. So here's the first question that you have submitted. Class size is an important issue among classroom teachers, especially when classes reach the 25 students or more level. In Cedar Falls this year, there are classrooms with 28 or more students at the elementary and secondary level. In today's culture of interventions, state assessments, relationship building, meeting the diverse academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of students as learners, and so forth, large class sizes make it especially demanding of classroom teachers. Now, this is the question. What do you feel about class size issues, and how should the district truly address class size issues? And I think we'll start with Mr. Gruber.
Well, thank you. Class size can be an issue, and like in my previous answer, I was addressed. I think the increased enrollment over the next 10 years can be solved by making the Cedar Falls district attractive to not only retain staff, excellent staff that we have, teachers and staff, but also make it attractive for teachers and staff to come here to the district and teach, and then additional teachers and staff in the classrooms will make those class ratios come down a lot. So like I said, I would like to see that done through incentives through the employment contracts that when we get to negotiating stages, and anything that we can do to just set Cedar Falls apart from other school districts in the state, and as I mentioned earlier, to keep them from moving north to, for more winter, I suppose.
Mr. Hassman?
So, well, first of all, it's not ideal. When you have that many students in a classroom, it's not ideal. I think it's also important, though, to back up a little bit, and I don't think that probably the administration really wants to have it that way, and certainly it's not, like I say, it's not ideal. There's a problem that happens with one, just from a staffing standpoint. I mean, if you end up with that section that has 28 and the other one has 25, and then, do you add the additional cost, which the funding mechanism is fixed? I mean, you don't get extra funding because of the way the state structures the funding. You don't get extra funding that you could necessarily do that. Now, you could reprioritize, you could reallocate resources, and maybe take it away from some special program or something like that, but then maybe you're damaging another part of the program that's beneficial to another group of students. So all I'm saying is that it's not ideal, and I would look at it on a case-by-case status. And the other thing that happens is we're a growing district. This is actually one of the problems that growing districts have, is that in our funding formula, that the monies that we received this year are based on the students we had last year. So we've got about, if you do the formula, we've got about a $750,000 deficit, if you will, for the funding formula of what we're able to hire the teachers. So based on that formula, there's this lag in 1 year. So if we had that money to address the students that we have in the school district right now, it would be a lot easier to be able to hire those additional teachers and bring the class size down to a much more manageable level. So it's everybody working together. I know it's not ideal, and and if it were my child in that classroom, I'd say, hey, I would really prefer that they be in a smaller classroom. If it's that teacher, I'd say, that really, I mean, that's not the best ideal situation, but that's just kind of a perspective of how the mechanisms works and some of the challenges that we have.
and we can go right off of what Jeff said. It's absolutely true from the funding standpoint. But one of the things that I think that the district has really taken charge of is the PLCs, which are the professional learning communities, where the teachers have collaborative time to make those assessments of students. So while they may have large classrooms, they have some extra time to help identify students, maybe reorganize them during the day so that if it's a reading structure or if it's math, that the students can be assisted with those struggles. So it's not ideal. Nobody wants 28. I'm sure we could pull up our policy to find out how many students we recommend per class. But it is all geared to financing and the state aid.
Okay, I was lucky when we first came to the district. It was still the time where usually our class sizes at the elementary level were 19, so I got used to that. And so I was one of those that got very emotional when class sizes went up. But again, as we kind of grow as parents and we learn more, and I've come around to 360 on a lot of things as a parent that I thought something and then I've come to appreciate other things. Data does show that class size is not the pure determinant of student success in the classroom. What I would rather see in the classroom, you can have a small class size, but if you have students who are struggling with mental health, with behavior disorders and things like that are a high percentage of that class, it's not going to matter the number of students you have in that classroom. So what I would really rather see us do is, again, look at some more ways that we can address the mental health services, have that be an increased support for our teachers in the classroom. My students have been in those large classrooms. My son was a typical bubble class. He was in a large classroom all through elementary. He was still very successful. I think what we need to do is find ways that we can provide intervention, provide support services for our teachers, whether that is for our paraprofessionals, whether it is for using our mental health. Really, the state has not recognized that mental health is something we need to be funded at a significant level yet in public education. I think that's something we all need to lobby for and talk to our legislators about. So I think class size does become a very emotional issue. I think it's something parents do latch onto. The easy answer would be, sure, let's just hire more teachers, but as both Jeff and Susie alluded to, that's not really necessarily the most straightforward, the most easy thing to do, because if we're making those decisions, we are giving up some other things. And I think we have some great things happening with our district, with our CAPS program. I would like to see our CAPS program, actually that model. What that model is mentorship in the classroom, real-world experiences in a business setting for our high school students. But I would like to see those students be expanded down to our elementary. We can have CAPS-like model experiences within our elementary classrooms. It's collaboration. Our teachers are no longer the sole source of information. They're facilitators of education. So I think there's ways that we can do that, provide support services for our teacher, and really address the class size issue in that sense. So thank you.
Ms. Sims?
Thank you. As a new candidate, I'm a little bit of a disadvantage to our current board members who have access to the financial data. And I was told when I decided to run, I want to talk to Dr. Petit. He gave me this packet of information. He said the hardest thing is school finance. And as I read through the packet, I said, yes, the hardest thing is school finance. I think that since we have sort of solved at least temporarily at the elementary level, the capacity in terms of the buildings, once that funding catches up, we'll be able to add staffing as needed. But in the interim, my daughter is a 6th grade teacher, not here, but I asked her about this. I said, so she has 28 students. And I said, how do you do this? Is it a difficult thing for you between, say, 25 and 28 students, because a couple were added when her class was started? And she said, really adding a couple more students doesn't add to my work, and it doesn't keep me from educating the students well. She said, but there are days when I can't get to all of them for individual attention. And it's at those times when she leans on her team, and they work together in a collaborative way to identify the needs of particular students who might be struggling. And then they find a strategy together in their PLC time to see how they can help that student. So it's true that on any given day, my daughter as a 6th grade teacher might not be able to give individual math help to every single student in her class, but she will know who needs it most and be able to tailor both her time and her team member times, other teachers who are having that, and she can help her team members as they need it with her expertise in subjects where the students are needing help. I think that might be something that is probably already happening in our district, but we could work to build on when we have large classes. We also have a lot of parent volunteers who are very capable and very willing to help, and there are often other paraeducators in the classroom who can assist a teacher when things get a little bit difficult. But in general, I believe that although we would all like to have the smaller class sizes, we have tools to make it work in the interim while we look to see when and how staffing could be ramped up for the benefit of the next section the next year.
Thank you. And Mr. Cully?
Thanks. I agree. I think as a new candidate in this process, I have a lot to learn when it comes to school finance, and I would commit to doing that. I will say that I was in a much smaller school, and I had a smaller class size. And I wouldn't say that our district and our school was thriving like Cedar Falls district is, and so that is a good problem to have. I do think it's important to have reasonable class sizes to the highest extent possible. I also realize it's not necessarily always as straightforward as hiring more individuals so that we can make class sizes smaller. I've been really excited to learn about some of those more creative ways to make sure we are engaging our students in some sort of higher level of learning, and also wrapping resources around students that might be struggling. I have a background in mental health, and I will completely agree that what's been said. I do think there needs to be a heightened focus on students who need additional resources, and if their voices are kind of becoming quiet in a large classroom, we need to focus on that and make sure that they are having the chance to succeed like anyone else. I've learned about the professional learning community, and I do think that sounds like a great way to collaborate across educators and to just bounce ideas off each other and reduce silos and help share success during times when circumstances aren't ideal in the form of large classrooms. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question. Recent events at Pete underscore the needs for training for all staff on ensuring our schools are safe and inclusive for LGBTQ students from pre-K to high school. What are you willing to advocate for in regards to this training and supporting our LGBTQ students? And let's start with Ms. Leeper.
Thank you. If anyone watched our meeting the other night, we had really a packed room. We had the overflow room full of people who came here to support our students. And I will say, as a board member, having been here for 8 years, it was really refreshing to see people come to support something and support our students, rather than just come to be against something and voice their displeasure with something. So first of all, I want to thank everybody who came. It was actually a really great evening. I do think it's important for our staff to understand that this is something that is happening in our schools. I think this is more an adult problem. Our students, that we do have bullying happening in the classroom, but a lot of our students are very accepting of other students. So we do need to leverage and take advantage of their acceptance in the schools, welcome that, embrace that, and teach them that really their tolerance, their standing up to others. They may not be in that situation, but being silent sometimes is just as dangerous as actually being the person who is doing some of this damaging behavior. So I think for a staff, we do need to look at how we are going to systematically bring in some training so that we can have those support services. We need to have safe people in our schools that students can come and talk to. Sometimes that is not happening at their homes, especially when it comes to something like an LGBTQ issue. We do a lot of that training at UNI. I'm halfway through it right now, so it'd be great if we can partner with UNI. I think what our district does really well, what I appreciate about our current superintendent, he really knows how to build consensus and bring things to our district when they're ready to do that. I do agree with our speaker we had the other night. His comment was never waste a crisis. I do think this gives us an opportunity to maybe actually move a little faster on things than we normally do in Cedar Falls. I always laugh when people think we've moved really quickly on an issue. That typically does not happen in Cedar Falls. We are very good at analyzing and looking at the data before we do something, but I do think this offers us an opportunity to move a little quicker and look where we can do something with our district to support our students and also educate our parents. Again, acceptance and tolerance does not have to equal agreement. It just equals kindness and love. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
Thank you. I echo Jenny's remarks. We do know that we have had some support systems in the district. Maybe they haven't been as active over time or not. We've had a Harmony group at the high school for 25 years that have dealt with a variety of things, everything from racial things to LGBTQ. It's having those support items led by staff, led by educators, and having the students active in those. So I do love that we do need to move faster. And so I agree with that.
Thank you. Mr. Hessler.
I'm an advocate for treating all of our students with respect and appreciating the diversity that exists in our classrooms. When my children came to the Cedar Falls School District, they didn't speak English. They could say hello, thank you, and goodbye. So that put them in a very unique position of being a real strange minority here in the middle of Iowa, where everybody speaks English and they're all the same and they all look the same, and they were welcomed. And they flourished in the Cedar Falls school system, and they all speak English very well now, thank you. But I think it just exemplifies as well, kind of like Jenny was saying, I think our kids create a great environment there. My kids, they are very accepting and of all different and diversity, and we celebrate diversity. I love people from different countries with different backgrounds, with different experiences, with different beliefs, and we can have great discussions. Maybe we don't agree at the end, but we can have mutual respect and show kindness to each other, and I think that's what's important, that we don't lose sight of that in this discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Group.
Okay. Well, I was at the meeting on Monday, and it was an incredible show of support for our LGBTQ plus students. I agree with some of the statements up here where the district at all levels look into trainings such as the ones that are offered by organizations like Iowa Safe Schools. Personally, I support the right for students to feel safe and secure in the wall of their school, because for some, the school may be the only safe place, because their life outside of the school walls can be quite tumultuous. On the other hand, the 8 hours a day within a school can be pure torture for some. Excuse me. I was one of those students when I was this age. I experienced not an insignificant amount of bullying in my middle school, junior high years, and early high school years. For me, the situation, it's unfortunate that, while it's unfortunate that some students may have felt uncomfortable walking past the tables that morning, I find it we cannot equate that temporary discomfort felt by those students by what some of the students that were being celebrated, minority populations, face nearly every day of their life, every day, every hour of their life. For some, harassment and bullying by peers is a near constant and never-ending experience, and I can attest to that on a personal level. I would like to see, as I mentioned before, I would like to see training undergone, like the training from the Iowa Safe Schools undergone by staff, board, and administration to help alleviate these issues that marginalized students often face.
Thank you. Mr. Cully?
As I am thinking about my answer to this, I'm just reminded that I myself am answering the question from a place of privilege, and I want to call that out. If we revert back to the fact that we're here for student achievement, I couldn't imagine convincing students to achieve if they don't even feel safe. As a candidate, it would be my total goal to make sure that all groups of students feel safe and celebrated in their unique identities, including the LGBTQ community. It wouldn't stop at that. And I do agree there are a number of outlets to train and to make sure that we're setting that culture. Either way, I think we would need to choose something that is high class, high quality, does actually show data that it changes the culture. And I think the more kind of higher level term of bullying, I think there needs to be a zero tolerance policy. And I think this really can be seen as a public health concern. I really do think that when you look at some of these things happening, the indicators of what that does to the overall student experience and achievement, it's undeniable. So we do need to address that and continue to set a healthy pace in the right direction. And that would be my perspective as a candidate.
Thank you. And Ms. Sims?
As I've thought about this for the last several days and talked to people that were involved in on both sides of the issue that happened at Pete, and had some other discussions, I'm reminded that our kids, our students, have a lot to teach us. And they do a pretty good job of sorting things out. Yes, there are bullies. And yes, there are problems. And yes, there are kids that are insensitive. But I think for the most part, when we as parents take a step back and let our kids learn how to engage with each other, they will do a good job of it. And they will teach us how to do a good job of it as well. Sometimes when we move quickly to address an important grievance, we can create unintended consequences. I think a deliberative approach is what's necessary here. This is part, this is part of an overall societal tension that is not going to be solved by a school board or in any given school district or even staff training. This begins with not trying to protect ourselves from each other, but looking for ways to connect to each other. Our kids do a good job of that. They can lead the way. We should be asking them, how do you connect to someone that you don't understand? How do you connect to someone that you don't agree with? Let them share their opinions with us, and then let that guide some of the deliberation that occurs on a school board or in a school district. Because we can learn from them and allow them, who are in the incubator of our future leaders, to chart a better path forward than we've been able to devise for ourselves thus far.
Thank you. Next question. When determining district policy, would you seek out the input of teachers and paraeducators, and how would you do it? We'll start with you, Mr.
Absolutely. I mean, we're faced with issues all the time that involve teachers and paraeducators. I have an admission to make that I have an inside ringer on this one. My wife is a substitute teacher, often at different schools around the district. So, if there are things that maybe I need to bounce off, I have a very easy source for that. But in addition to that, I've with 4 kids coming up through the school district, I've had the opportunity to meet many wonderful teachers and have that connection and meet with them. It was at parent-teacher conferences, and the other thing is that often being on the board, we connect with the schools and we try and do each board member visits at least one school during the school year and talks with teachers and sees what's going on, sees what their concerns are, and is able to get feedback from them on what they need and what they need to be successful. So I feel like I have a lot of outlets to be able to get that kind of feedback.
Thank you. Mr. Gruber?
When setting board policy and discussing issues that our teachers and staff and students face in the buildings, I would absolutely seek out the input from everyone from the office secretaries to the teachers to the paraprofessionals straight down. As a substitute teacher myself, I do get the opportunity to discuss various issues facing our schools with teachers on occasion when I'm in the buildings and then we're between periods or on prep periods or on lunch, and I will find myself chatting with a lot of teachers, asking them about how some of the trends in education policy are affecting their ability to do their jobs. As a board member, I would expect myself to continue reaching out to teachers. I would, in as many ways as possible, to seek their input on things that we are considering.
Thank you. Mr. Cully?
I really feel like in my current role in healthcare leadership, I try to put this in practice as I lead in the space that I lead in. I couldn't imagine making an important change and then not communicating with and collaborating with the people that change will affect. It's almost never successful that you make a change based on what your own thoughts are and then you hand it down and assume that it will be well received, followed, or even be successful. And I think my goal would be to reduce those silos and have more transparent and open communication and have those policies informed. I think without doing that, it would make the assumption that the board knows the answers, and I really think the people closest to the work, they really know how policies can be changed and informed, and it would be my goal to do that. I think this question would help. So I think it points to a couple things. The first thing is making sure the district is organized well and that the policy reflects the people. I also think it's a bit of a culture setting question. You know, what are you telling your team if you don't pull them in to help inform some changes that you're making? I wouldn't want to do that. That's not my goal and not my approach.
Thank you. Ms. Sims?
I think it's important that all stakeholders have a voice in an issue. When it comes to, for example, paraeducators, I think sometimes they're the unsung heroes of the school day. I have some friends who are paraeducators, and they are, in general, very passionate about serving their students, and they have the opportunity to make observations that others in the building might not have, and they don't necessarily always have an outlet for that. And I think that where pertinent, it would be very wise to seek their counsel and their input on things. Of course, not every issue needs the input of everyone involved in a school, but for those stakeholders, when a decision is to be made, I think it's very important for us to seek out and do the research, that personal research with individuals, to find out what observations they may have, because we may uncover a perspective that we didn't have before. And if I were on the board, research is one of the things that I do a great deal of anyway in the work that I do. And I think that having those personal conversations, listening, and seeking out a variety of perspectives is the right way to go before a decision is made, especially on very important policies.
Thank you. Ms. Leeper?
So I'm probably not going to earn a lot of votes with what I'm going to say here, but I'm an honest person, so I'm going to tell you really what I think. Yes, I do think it's important that we get input from our stakeholders. I like our current board makeup very much because I think we represent a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different parent groups, a lot of different people who are on different sides of socioeconomics. They were on different sides of the bond issue. Having had 3 students go through the district, I've got the teachers that I'm still close to. I have my key teachers that I do seek out for feedback. I've got my parent group. But as a parent, in my role as in UNY admissions, I supervise our student associates. What I will share is just because you are able to have input does not mean you're always going to get what you want. And I think that is difficult when we start to talk about this. So it'd be very easy for me as a candidate wanting to get your votes to sit here and say, yes, I'm going to take your input and we're going to definitely make every decision based on that. But it is difficult. That's one thing I learned as a board member. I did think we could come on and make a lot of changes at times, and there were things that I could impact that now I've come to discover really don't necessarily fall under board authority. So we are having to make districts based on the benefits for all of our students, all of our staff, all of our stakeholders. There are tax dollars involved, there are budgets involved. So as much as I would like to say that everyone's input is going to result in the outcome that they want, I do think we are pretty good at taking that feedback and considering that feedback, but there are going to be tough decisions that we've had to make. There are decisions I've made that I've not necessarily agreed with, but I know it's been what's best for the district. So I hope you can appreciate that and respect the honesty that comes with that, but I think that's something that's very important for board members to understand, that we are here to do, and we all intend to do what's best for our students. These have been our students as well in the schools, so we're never making a decision that we feel is hurtful to teachers, hurtful to students. We really are trying to do the best that we can possibly do for our staff and for our students.
Thank you. And Ms. Hines?
And I do echo Jenny's response. That's what you get when you come after people, right? A lot of times, you talk about policy, and we know that the administrative team brings up policies. There are some of us that sit on subcommittees that might review those policies. Maybe there are multiple readings of those. A lot of times, you don't get them until you're in the board. You get your board package, and you go, okay, this is the new policy. And we know that the administrative team often goes to those groups to get the input, right? It's what you have to remember about school board is that, right, it's about you're approving policy and you hire and fire a superintendent.
And approve the budget.
That's the job. So, thanks.
Thank you. Next question. In 2017, the Iowa legislature changed the collective bargaining law. What knowledge do you have of the collective bargaining law changes? And how do you personally feel about this significant change in the playing field between employees and employers? Why don't we start with you?
What do I know about that? Lots of language taken out. Lots of language. Growing up, I had a mother who picketed as an educator. Didn't really understand why. I was young. But this goes back to the legislators. It's one of those trickle-down things. They hand it to you and you say, this is what it is. And you look to the experts in those fields for the information. And if you sit on the negotiation team, you look at your faculty and your staff across from you, and you take their input, and you hope to find consensus. How I feel about it is one way. My husband works at the university. I know what that looks like on that end. And we'll just continue working on that, hopefully, in the legislature regarding that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hassman?
So this is and sorry, I'm from the business world, so I'm going to put this in a business analogy. You have buyers markets and you have sellers markets, and the seller is the employees, is the staff. This is a seller's market that we're in. We have an unemployment rate that is at historic lows. It hasn't been this low since the 1960s. There is a scarcity of qualified employees. If you're any business in town, I know several businesses in town which have not been able to expand the way they want to because they can't find enough employees. So you can, and I realize that from the collective bargaining, the language and what happened there was damaging as far as language that was part of the union contract, that things became permissible. But I also look at it from a standpoint of this is a seller's market, and if we don't create, regardless of what the contract says, and I have all kinds of contracts with all different kind of business environments, if I have to go and look at the contract, that means that something's really wrong. There's not a spirit of trust that exists. There's not a spirit of respect that exists with who I'm dealing with. And I hope, and I think I believe that we are treating our employees, our staff, our faculty, and that's from all the way from the people that impact our education, that are bus drivers, our janitors, the paraeducators, our the secretaries that sit in the office, everybody has a really positive impact on our kids, and we're doing a great job. And we have to create a very positive environment for our employees, because if we don't, there's plenty of jobs out there. There's plenty of opportunity for them to do that. And so we need to make sure that we treat all of our staff, no matter where they're at in our educational system, with deep respect, and show them what they mean to us.
Thank you. Mr. Gruber?
Thank you. As far as that collective bargaining law in 2017, it damaged the public worker sector incredibly. Public workers now no longer feel safe in their positions in terms of grievance procedures when things go wrong. That collective bargaining law stripped out all permissible items down to base wages, and then it even capped those from being raised beyond any certain percentage, beyond a certain percentage, which escapes me. As I alluded to earlier, as a board, well, back up a bit here, in the legislature during 17, the argument down in the chamber was that organizations, these permissive items were optional, and districts and governments would not have to pull these out if they chose to. But the minute that law was signed, there was a rush by by the governments and school boards to renegotiate contracts, strip down to exactly what they had to provide and no more for most. I was pleased to see that the Cedar Falls agreement contained 4 to 5 of those permissive items. As I mentioned before, I would like to see more added into it. As far as, because I believe offering those protections that teachers and staff find in the collective bargaining agreement would go a long ways towards creating a positive environment for our employees and workers.
Mr. Cully?
As I'm sitting here, I'm reflecting on how a couple people have said the first year or two on the board was a major learning curve, and that's what I'm feeling right now. I don't want to pretend to have an answer on this, and what I will say is, as a new board member, it would be my total desire and ambition to learn as much as I could, especially when it comes to things that I don't feel well versed in. And I also think, from a board perspective, the highlighting a lack of knowledge on one person is a great opportunity to rest on the rest of the board when it comes to this, and to ask questions and remain inquisitive. And that would be what I would do if I ever encountered something I didn't feel well versed on, and I would certainly research that and do my absolute best to understand its implications against the district.
Thank you. Ms. Sims?
Well, the collective bargaining legislation that came out was not designed to target teachers' unions. It was designed to deal with tax issues and general philosophies over labor unions versus not having labor unions have some of the benefits that they had. The reality of the law was that it impacted our staff, it impacted our school district and other school districts across the state. There are also positive consequences that came from the law in terms of taxing policy that resides at the state, that we don't have anything to do with here. There's always two sides to these issues. What's important to think about with the collective bargaining law and its impact to our district locally is what, I guess I agree with Jeff on this, that we can still strive in our district to make the district an inviting and professionally acceptable and professionally satisfying place for people to work. And it may be that they will find other districts that they want to move to, but we will work hard here to make this an inviting place. The collective bargaining issue is not set in stone. They're going to be rehashing that in every legislature down the road. And the best thing for a board to do is to stay abreast of the changes and to do what's best for both the taxpayers and the staff. And there's always a balance in there, and there's always going to be trade-offs. But the most important thing to do is in responding to the law is to find the best way forward for those who are employed in the district, who put their time and effort to making our students' experience the best it can be, and strive to use whatever is within the law to give them a great professional experience here.
Thank you. And Ms. Leeper.
Okay, thank you. This is another question that would be very easy to sit and pander to you. I'm not going to do that. I know I see some of our people that really represent our teachers' unions very strongly in the room. I do think that when we made the decisions about permissive language in our contracts, we really were very considerate and deliberate about it. I do very much trust our administrative team. Adrian Talbot, our HR director, is, he really is, it's important to him that we have a positive work culture. So I do think we really measured those things when we looked at it. Some of the permissive language we changed, for instance, was something we needed to add some school time to the day. Some of the language we changed allowed us to, rather than just add 10 minutes to the day and have to pay for those 10 minutes for every staff member, we took some time out of planning and were able to do that and then add that to the day. Again, this is not ideal for our teachers because we took some of their planning time. And if you are a responsible and good teacher, you are using that planning time to your full extent. We know, all of us who have been parents in those rooms, you are using more than that planning time because you are planning before school and after school and when you're home doing laundry. So we know that you are putting in way more time than you are ever clocking in and out of your school. Again, as a board member, I think it's our duty to have to balance all of that. I believe and I hope that the reality is that we provide a very positive work culture at Cedar Falls. With our PLC process, we are very much about collaboration, about teamwork within our buildings. I do feel like as a board, we have annual, actually biannual retreats with our admin teams. So we have retreats with our principals where we are hearing what's happening in your buildings. We're hearing not only the data and the statistics about how you're doing on those standardized tests, but we're hearing about what you're actually seeing in your classrooms. So I hope that we are creating a positive culture for you. We do value you as teachers. That's what I think the most important part of a successful classroom is, outside of class numbers, outside of facilities. One of my bigger concerns for our teachers was the working conditions for our high school teachers, so I hope we're going to be able to address that and actually provide you a comfortable, safe, and wonderful place to work. But we do appreciate you even when we're making those hard decisions, so thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is a part testimonial and part question. Our support staff, paraeducators, school secretaries, custodians, food service, and bus drivers are true heroes in our schools because of the day-to-day impact they have on our students and the school environment. They are underpaid for valuable work they do. Our paraeducators work with the most needy of our students with very diverse academic, physical, medical, and social emotional needs. School secretaries truly run the school as they are the first to deal with parents, sick students, classroom teachers, and so forth. As school board members, how can you best advocate for increasing salaries for support staff, and how aware are you of the salary and benefit differences between Cedar Falls' various support group staffs in neighboring districts? And let's start again down here with Mr. Culley.
I think I was glad to hear that first part testimony. It reminds me of some of my team members that I have in my current role in healthcare, and it is true that some of our positions that we might kind of call support positions, they do some of the best work and sometimes go unrecognized, unfortunately. And what I would want to do is I'd want to learn a couple things. One, what has been done around this topic? What are we actually able to do? I don't know if something like this ties back to legislation like what has been spoken about, but I would want to learn that. And I certainly would want to continue to do everything that we could at the district level to make sure that these positions feel adequately compensated and also feel valued and feel like they're getting a adequate and fair share of recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Gruber.
Well, as a substitute teacher, some of my favorite positions are when I have a good support staff in the classroom, especially for some of those very challenging rooms that there are a lot of educational needs by the students, and I cannot thank those paraprofessionals that work with me I cannot thank them enough. They make my job easier and help to manage the room, especially when it gets a little hairy. They do far more than sometimes is reasonably expected. As I would advocate for the paras just like I would advocate for the teachers. I think, again, the Support Personnel Association goes back to what I have discussed before, helping them, making their positions more secure, more stable in ways through the collective bargaining agreement with that association. I'm not familiar with the items in that particular contract, but to speak for like some of the other staff, I noticed that of the contracts I've seen, the one with the CFEA has the permissive items, the one with another group did not. That would be something I would like to see added back in terms of the permissive items as well.
Thank you. Mr. Hassman.
These are great people. Whether it be, I think about my kids. We're riding the school bus with Larry, and I don't even know Larry's last name. I know he's since retired, but he came back and stopped by our house a few years after he'd retired and stopped in, and we had a great chat with Larry. And my kids were always excited to see Larry. Here's a kind of if you call it an obscure, just a bus driver, but had a wonderful impact on my kids, and they have great memories of. And it was stepping on that bus in the morning and seeing Larry. It was going to be it was a great way to start off their day. And so, absolutely, I want to just commend everyone who's involved in education. It is a highly impactful on our community, on our society. And frankly, we can't pay you enough. We get a supplemental state aid, and the package comes, and the administration says this is how much you got. And here's a recommendation. Here's I think what we can do based on this amount. And this group, I know that, for example, HR came and there was one group said, hey, I think we need to give a little bump to this group this year because that we're not competitive in the market. We need to compensate these people more. And so these are difficult budget decisions. You're given it is a square box, and you can't expand it even if you wanted to. The formula just doesn't allow you to do that. And so as board members, we absolutely try and compensate people as much as we possibly can based on the rules that we're given. And I just want to say thank you for everyone who's involved in education, because there's no way that we can compensate you enough for what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
I think it was the special ed paras did have some additional pay increase to try to bring them up to the whatever level we were working towards. We all remember the lunch lady. We all had our favorite lunch lady, didn't we? Monday we heard about the janitor who had retired after 42 years at Hanson, spending at least 26 years, I think, at Hanson. These are people that we're all working towards the same thing. District education, children. We're all working towards the same thing. We hope we're working in a box. And again, it's one of those things, we don't get these things brought to us. These often are handled separately by HR. I think it's one of those things that you just try to do maybe from home even more so. I remember telling my son, do you thank the lunch lady? Do you thank the custodian? When you go back for maybe that second entree or third, what do you do? How do you do that? And how do we show appreciation for all of our staff? A lot of it comes back to the home. A lot of it comes back to the students and how we can encourage them.
When we talk about safety in our schools, I would say the groups that we just talked about, our bus drivers, our custodians, our paraprofessionals, our lunch ladies, I mean, they really probably are mostly responsible for the safety of our students. They're making sure our students are getting to school safely. They're making sure our schools are clean, clutter-free, dry places that they can walk around the building safely. They're making sure they're getting food that is prepared in a safe manner. So first of all, I think they probably have a bigger impact on the safety of our students, our paraprofessionals in those classrooms who are helping our teachers manage them, than anybody else in our district. So it is definitely an undervalued professions for all of those groups we just talked about. When we do talk about those contract agreements, Adrienne always does bring comparative analysis, and we know we are behind. We are right now not competitive in all of those areas. We are behind neighboring districts, statewide districts, probably nationwide averages. So what we are trying to do is in a processed way move forward. Again, being on the board, I think all of us would like to say, yeah, let's just pay everybody more. That would be the greatest thing. We've talked about trying to do that for some of our groups. When we talk about those school secretaries who honestly do run the school, I think secretary is almost an insult because they do so much more than that. They are more than office managers. They really are the ones keeping those schools on track. We have tried to make situations where we can actually move forward with some groups quicker than others. That creates other issues, and there are things that kind of bind us when we're talking about how to move those pay scales forward. In a competitive level, do we do it for one group and maybe not the other group one year? It's really a much more difficult puzzle than I wish it was just something we could just come out and pay everyone more. I do think we're aware of that as a district. We understand that we are behind in those positions. They work very hard for the salaries they get. So we do understand that that is something very pressing we need to continue to move forward on. I hope as a district we can continue to see growth. Again, even when we talked about growth, that page does not, when we talked about we're a year in arrears for payment, it doesn't ever really catch up. As long as we are growing, we are always a year behind in paying for the students that we're now educating. So it's not something like by growth, we're just gonna some year catch up and now all of a sudden we have extra money. We do need to decide that that's a priority, so thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Sims?
Again, school finance is the toughest thing you'll encounter on the school board, and I'm not on the school board. So you'll get a better answer from those three that have already answered about the actual dollar situation. But I think the question reflects an important thing for us to consider. The question is, how would we advocate for the staff employees that do this vital work? One of my closest friends is a lunch lady. And over the years, we've had discussions about things she does, and I am in awe of what she does for the pay she gets. She gets a lot of job satisfaction because she knows she's really providing a great service to the students, and she cares about them. She loves them. And so there's great satisfaction for her. That doesn't come through in the paycheck. So there must be some sort of a feeling, at least among some employees, that there is not enough appreciation, whether it's going to come through a paycheck or somewhere else, for the work that they do. And I think that my conversations with my friend would reflect that she feels that way sometimes too, which does not mean that the administration doesn't care. It doesn't mean that the board doesn't care. It just means that the work is hard and often underappreciated and often unseen. And when school finance makes it impossible to compensate the way that we would like to compensate these wonderful employees, then it thinks it would behoove the board and the district to look at other ways to show that appreciation. Kindness and thank yous definitely help, that it doesn't pay more bills. And I don't know what those answers would be, but that would be something worth looking at, even if the answer is not something that we might want it to be. The question comes from a position of we don't feel valued. So let's find a way to add value to those positions, even when we can't add dollars until finances change at the state level.
Thank you. Thank you all for your wonderful questions this evening. I am so sorry that we did not get to all of your questions. I guess time does fly when you're having fun. I also want to thank the candidates up here for their thoughtful responses to all of the questions. It is now time for closing statements, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And why don't we start down at this end this time?
All right, thank you. Everyone that's here and anyone that might be watching the recording is really wondering, who should I vote for? There's 6 people vying for 4 spots. You have 3 who are incumbents and know a whole lot more than 3 who are not. But you'll be making a decision based on what you think are the answers you wanted to hear, or who might be able to bring the best experience to this position. I bring to this position the experience of not only a parent who's put 5 kids through this district and is engaged at all levels of the education system, been involved, as I said, with a facilities committee that helped get a lot of the schools finally in place, been involved in other committees at the school district level. I'm involved with a lot of nonprofit work, so I understand the areas of socioeconomic challenges, and I'm also involved in the areas where there are social issues and conversations need to be had when we have clashes in worldviews and clashes in opinions. I bring to this opportunity my deliberative mind and intensity of effort, because I am devoted to education, devoted to our community, and always devoted to any task that is given to me, and will bring to bear not only my experience, but also my passion for our students and their future. I have no children in school anymore, so I have time to devote to this, and have no bias for any of my children's experiences. My only bias is for all of the children to be able to grow to their greatest potential.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank our sponsors again. Again, I'm not going to name them because we all already did, but the community, my fellow board members, and the candidates for willing to put themselves up here and serve our community. I'm asking for your vote because I really do have a passion for education. I'm going to go back to my experience that I did. I ran out of time the first time I was going to talk about it, but I started as basically a PTO president. I was our president at Lincoln Elementary. Through that, I really started to just become passionate about education. I served on district committees, including our Iowa Core Committee, which was very important as our teachers looked at how to adopt that and implement it successfully in Cedar Falls. I've had 2 terms on the Cedar Falls School District School Board. I've worked at Hawkeye Community College in their high school relations department, so I'm very familiar and understanding of our concurrent high school courses that we offer. That's that dual credit for community college and high school credit. I think it's very important to have an understanding of that so that our students are getting the right kind of college credit depending on their post-secondary goals. And now I'm at the UNI Department of Admissions, recruiting future Panthers, and I really bring now a whole K through 16 sense of understanding and experience to the board. And I think that's really helping me collaborate with our admin team to make sure we are doing what's right for our students, not just while they're at Cedar Falls High School, but as they leave our building, go on to be successful in the post-secondary world and go on for future professions. Whoever is elected to the board needs to continue to advocate for our students and continue to challenge our district to be a leader in how best to educate today's students. We talked about earlier our motto is tradition of excellence here in Cedar Falls, but that can either lead to comfort and complacency, or it continue to spur us to grow and embrace discomfort and change, which is sometimes hard. But as we explore those pathways that facilitate today's students and how they can learn, I think we have a lot of great identities. Again, I want to help us identify the strengths and passions for our students so they can leverage that. It's more likely they're going to learn at a high level if they have that love of learning again, like we've seen in our kindergartners. A lot of times we've lost that by the time they're graduating. So if we can find ways to re-bring that into the classroom, I think it's a great opportunity we have facing us. So thank you. I hope you consider me for your vote, and thanks for the last 8 years. So,
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
Who should you vote for? Someone who's vested in the district and the community. Someone who advocates for public education. Somebody who's committed to serving every student, every day. And someone who shows Tiger pride. I'm asking for you to entrust one of your 4 votes for the November 5th election. This would be going on my 2nd term, but we are asking for whoever becomes the next 4 board members that they continue to be informed and educate themselves in the role of a school board. This isn't time for personal agendas or single issue people on the board, because that doesn't lend for improvement or enhancing delivery for education for our young people, because that's why we're here. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hessman?
Yeah, I'm excited that there's 6 candidates up here. I think it's fantastic that we've got 6 people vying for 4 positions. I think that's just always healthy. There's no better expression than democracy on a local level than a school board. I mean, it's local people working with local issues, and so I'm really excited that, and I thank everyone here for running. And you know, I'd ask if you've watched school board meetings. You know, you can watch them and you can see how I interact. I don't have any agendas or any axe to grind or anything like that. I like to ask questions that I think people want to know. Sometimes they're tough questions. You'll know that I want us to be fiscally responsible and try and stretch those dollars as far as we can, because our kids deserve it, to be able to offer them as much as we possibly can. You know, we have a big task coming forward in the next 4 years. We're going to build a new high school. We're going to spend over $100 million in investment in our community. And this board's going to be responsible for overseeing the construction of that high school and making choices about what that high school looks like. And so I think that's one of the unique things as well that I can bring to the board, is some experience in financial oversight and construction projects and that type of thing. And you know, I would certainly ask for your vote on November 5th. Don't be there November 4th. And if reelected, I look forward to serving my community for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gruber?
I want to start by thanking everyone, the organizers, moderator, Jean, thank you, Channel 15, and the candidates for stepping up and running. It's exciting to be part of this talented and passionate group for education. And I want to thank everyone here in attendance tonight. Thanks for coming out and listening to us and hear what we have to say. As I mentioned earlier this evening, I am running because I strongly believe in the mission of public education, and I believe that CF schools are one of our strongest assets. I believe I can be an effective advocate on the board for students, educators, and staff, as well as the community. I believe my training and experience in policy, insurance, banking, along with my years working in education, have provided me a unique worldview that will help me to see the issues before the board from multiple perspectives, and understanding the impact on our students, on our teachers and staff, and on our community. I would be honored to serve on the board and work to provide our students with the best path towards success and achievement in their lives. Anyone who has any further questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to get together over a cup of coffee to chat. I hope by November 5th, I will have earned your trust as well as your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Cully?
I would ask for your vote because I've had firsthand experience of what education can do for someone. When I just reflect on the time that I've spent being educated, it's some of the best times of my life, and I really do believe it's made me who I am, and I think education is the first way to becoming better. I really do believe we're here for the students. I also think we're here to support our educators and the other positions we've referenced. I think that coming from the healthcare space, I'm very familiar with knowing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you're measuring the effectiveness of what you're doing. We really are held accountable to our results, and I think that'll translate well to a board seat. And I just want to say, as I've met with people over the last couple of weeks here in Cedar Falls, it's been pretty overwhelming to just hear people talk about the district. And as I've heard people's support and how much they like the district, it's almost made me feel a little unqualified because there's so many in the community that really should be sitting up here. So for that, I'm just thankful that I get the chance to be here tonight and participate.
Thank you. Let's thank our candidates. And let's all remember to vote on November 5th. Thank you all.